Guildhall Fantasy Alliance, a set in the Guildhall Fantasy family of games that have recently been released by AG. It is a re-implementation of their Guildhall system. Coalition, Fellowship, and Alliance came out. I already reviewed Coalition and Fellowship. Now it is the turn of Alliance. Alliance plays exactly like the other two sets. It's not like one of those games where you have standalone expansions that have unique specific ways. The rules are exactly the same for all three sets. All that changes is the composition of the deck of cards and the different effects that different cards allow you to perform. Just like in the other two sets, you collect sets of cards. You have cards representing different professions, and for each profession you have 5 colors. You're trying to collect a set of all 5 cards of a profession in all 5 colors, all different colors. At that point, you can turn that set face down, and that is a completed chapter that becomes currency that you can use to purchase victory point cards. And when you play a card in your play area, it triggers effects that are indicated by these icons here. And the power of the effect is based on the number of cards of that type that you already have in your Guildhall. So if I'm playing this card and I already have 3 assassins in my Guildhall, I can trigger that effect. If I'm playing a marshal and I have a marshal already in my Guildhall, I can trigger that effect. Simple as that. Play a card, trigger the effect, play another card, trigger the effect, resolve all the effects, and your turn is over. You can also spend actions to get new cards, discarding from your hand and drawing back to 6, or you can spend actions to purchase victory point cards by spending completed chapters. This is the game, and this is the games, the 3 sets of Guildhall. What really makes each set different really is the different set of powers that the characters have. So it may feel scary. You have characters, you need to learn what they do in general, and you need to learn what they do at different levels. The first, not all characters have many levels. This one works the same way at all levels, and even the ones that have several levels. In truth, the higher levels intensify and improve on what the general effect is. So each character has a general effect that works better at higher levels. It's not vastly different effects. And then you also have a set of 6 player rates, 6 cards telling you what each character does. So you put these on the table face up for players to pick up, read when they need it, put it back. You leave them available for everybody. It works very well. It only takes a couple of turns for players to get a sense of what the cards do, and so to get a sense of what the possibilities in the game are. Then in another couple of turns you also start seeing some synergies and combos, and the game then becomes even more interesting. Let's see what these characters do. The Spellblade, in general, the Spellblade swaps cards in your hand with cards in another player's Guildhall, and you place the cards from the other player's Guildhall into your hand, and then you take another action. So that's neat. And the more Spellblades you have in your Guildhall, when you play a new one and you trigger an effect, the more powerful the effect is. But this is still swapping cards from Guildhall to hand. The Marshal, simple effect. He collects victory points, goes around and collects them for you. As simple as that. The Shaman draws cards on the deck, then places cards from your hand back on top of the deck. So there is this interesting effect here that you do get a lot of new cards, alright, but you also need to make sure when you're putting cards back on top of the deck that you're not leaving too much good stuff for your opponent. Possibly you want to leave duplicates for your opponent, because the opponent will not be able to use duplicate cards in their Guildhall. If the opponent has a green wizard and you put a green wizard on top there, then the opponent will not be able to have another green wizard in their Guildhall. A duplicate is a card of a profession, of 2 cards with the same profession, same color, are duplicates. And you cannot have duplicates in your Guildhall. The more levels you have, the higher your level. In Shamanism, the more you can do it and the more chaotic things can be. You can get it all the way until you draw 7 cards on the deck, and then you place 3 cards back on top. The Assassin does as a little bit of fiddly card. As you can see, there are cards that have just a little more complex procedures than in other sets if you follow my videos or you play the game. These procedures just have more steps, they're less intuitive, at least for some of the characters. So the Assassin, not my favorite character really. Allows you to draw a card, then you move a card from your Guildhall into another player's hand, then you discard random cards to another player's hand. It seems to me a lot of work to force the opponent to discard cards and for you to get cards. There are just other characters in the game in other sets that allow you to take cards from the other players, to draw cards. It seems to me almost like they were a character short for this set, and so they put together some effects that the characters had, and they create this character which is a little clumsy to play, a little awkward. Mind you, there are games that have much more complex mechanics, but everything else in the game is so linear and straightforward that this character to me somehow stands out as unusually complicated, and it really goes against the overall flow, the overall philosophy of Guildhall, which is interesting effects and interesting combos, but everything linear, intuitive, and straightforward. This one, not so much. The Wizard allows you to place cards on a discard pile into your Guildhall. Super mega powerful. I like this card very much. At lower levels, you're stuck with what's on top of the discard pile, which again means you can manipulate things a little bit as you're discarding cards to prevent the opponent from grabbing a good card. But if the opponent already has some wizards, then you cannot. There's no point in doing that, in checking what you put on top of the discard pile, because the opponent with multiple wizards can inspect the discard pile. In any case, very nice things, very nice way of optimizing your Guildhalls, in optimizing your sets, and try to go quick on your path, to travel quickly on your path towards victory. The Scion, strange card. Take a number of cards equal to the number of Scions you have in your Guildhall from another player's chapter and place them in your Guildhall, and that's okay. Then you place the same number of cards on the top of the deck into your opponent's Guildhall and you discard all the duplicates. So you do steal cards from an opponent, which is pretty confrontational and annoying if the opponent worked hard to build a chapter. Now you do have a chapter already of Science if you're able to do good stuff with them, and you take another big chapter from the other player. That to me creates maybe too much of a momentum towards the player that grabs Science first. And then, well, the opponent gets a consolation prize, gets an equal number of cards, and sometimes those cards will be useful, other times they will be a duplicate, so the opponent doesn't really know what to do with those. And we're back to the Spellblade, the Marshal, etc., etc., etc. It's not a bad expansion, it is just that to me is the least interesting of the three. That is to say, if you are to buy only one expansion, do not start from Alliance if you want to follow my advice, but start from Coalition if you like a highly confrontational game, or Fellowship if you want more of a friendly game where everybody's doing their stuff and there's a little less interaction, a little less direct backstabbing and cutthroating. Or throat cutting, I'm not sure. The point is that Alliance is similar to me to Coalition in terms of complexity, in terms of interactivity. So I don't know why they call them Alliance and Coalition. People are always messing with each other in these games. It should have been like Confrontation and you know, like the Red Wedding or Betrayal, something like that. The two games, so the two sets are similar in terms of flavor, but Alliance feels more chaotic. It feels there's more work to be done to achieve the same things the Coalition do. Get out of people's way, annoy them by destroying their sets, taking them away, worsening their sets. Coalition and Alliance do the same thing. Alliance does that with more cumbersome procedures, with slightly more complicated and less intuitive mechanics. Nothing wrong really with Alliance. It's still a lighter game than most of the games out there. It's still more intuitive and simpler to play than most games out there. It is that when you compare it with its fraternal twin Coalition, it feels like it's a little bigger than needed, a little heavier than needed, a little more complicated than is needed. It does the same things that Coalition does, with more work. So between the two, really, I don't see any reason to start from Coalition, from Alliance. I will go with Coalition first. Again, Alliance has nothing wrong per se, it's just that it's going against, in this virtual competition I'm creating, is going against Coalition and Fellowship, which are so good, so linear, so intuitive, and Alliance isn't as much. I still recommend getting it, well, if you're a completist, but if you are a completist, you're probably not even watching this video, you just already have bought all the sets. But if you want to have more customization, because of course you can mix and match the characters from all sets, then by all means, Alliance, of course, gives you more chances of doing that. But if you're not planning to get the whole set, if you don't care so much about mixing and matching, then Alliance should not be a priority for you, I believe. Coalition and Fellowship are the sets that you should start from. And if you like them, if you then have more game option, at that point, maybe you can add Alliance. Not a bad set per se at all, just not the best in the family.